I remember sitting on the Zodiac before my first drop thinking, like, I know there's been no fatalities of killer whales on people in the wild ever, but I was just thinking, if there's going to be a first one, it'll probably be me. But I got in, just dropped in, and I saw them, and oh my goodness, it was incredible. They kind of swam a circle around me, and this orca just come back round directly in front of me and just was tilted its head at me as if it was like working me out. And then from that moment on, every chance I got to get in the water, I was straight in. That initial fear of being the first person to be killed by a killer whale in the wild was just gone.
Today's guest is someone who's turned a lifelong love of the ocean into an inspiring and adventurous career. We're thrilled to welcome Sarah Neal, a marine biologist with over 15 years of experience working in the zoo and aquarium industry, now a lecturer at Kendal College in Cumbria, England. Sarah leads her students on wildlife conservation expeditions across the globe. Sarah, it is such a pleasure to have you. Was there a specific moment or experience that made you realize you wanted to pursue biology?
I was always drawn to the sea from as far back as I can remember, even as a tiny little girl. I always loved animals as well. And then when I was really young, I was only about 7 or 8. It was the 90s. I used to go down my grandma's every weekend, and on Saturday tea times there was this TV show called Sea Trek that was presented by Martha Holmes and Mike DeGroy, and every week they were in a different destination showing you life underwater, and they'd have their bubble helmets on and they'd be swimming with stingrays and showing you all the cool things around the world that live under the waves. And I remember watching that show and thinking, that is what I want to do. I think from that moment, I saw the titles of the people on the TV who were marine biologists. I went to the library. I'd got all the books out on whales and dolphins and sharks and marine life, and I just started reading them. I mean, I must have been, 8 years old, 9 years old when I was like, that is what I want to be. And I never ever changed my mind.
So then you went to Plymouth University, right, to then pursue the marine biology. How was that?
I absolutely loved university. I always wished I could do it over and over again. They were some of the best years of my life. It was difficult. I remember in the first year, it gives you a grounding in so many different things. You're studying chemistry, physics, genetics, geology, geography, everything.
Were you always strong in the math in math and sciences? I know sometimes people get intimidated because they feel like they have to be like a science genius to do the courses.
Science was always my favorite subject at school, and I did do well in all of my subjects, but I really put that down to the fact that I was really driven. I knew from a really young age exactly what I wanted to be. And I think because of that, I just tried really hard in all of my subjects. And I know there's lots of people that struggle with maths and science, and it doesn't need to be a barrier. There's loads of other skills and subjects that are just as important in the field, other than, your really, strong academic skills. They're definitely needed for lots of jobs. I wouldn't say that should put people off, but if it's something that you really want to do, then yeah, you should try and put a lot of effort into those key core subjects.
Are there any must-have skills or certifications that really make a difference in the field?
You need to be somebody that is happy to deal with people as well. That's something that I hear a lot of people say, especially my students and things. They come, to do careers like this that's with animals and wildlife and things, and I often hear them say because they prefer animals to people, but you still have to deal with people in any job role in these industries. So having those people skills is still important. Learning to dive and having your dive master also opens lots more doors and opportunities for you. It is, not every marine biologist does dive, and I know that, but equally, if you're a marine biologist and you're a dive master, it does open more opportunities to you. And then, as I mentioned earlier, being able to communicate your findings or what you want to raise awareness about and your passions in an effective way is also really important. And some people can struggle with the sort of engagement side of things and putting their ideas across. So having those skills is definitely an advantage. The main thing is getting hands-on experience. That's something that a lot of jobs look for, even if you've come out of university and you've got your degree. They tend to want experience as well. So getting experience early on as soon as you can to go alongside your qualifications is always an advantage. In the UK, we have lots of different things that people can get involved in as well. So there's like local volunteering that you can do with local organisations, whether that's beach cleans, seal surveys, sea watches. You can do marine mammal surveyor courses for different organisations in the UK as well. And I'd always encourage anybody to kind of go out and learn as many different skills and qualifications as they can to add to their CV so that you're more prepared to stand out against, the competition for jobs. And it gives you a lot more to talk about as well when you're being interviewed.
What are those different career fields within the marine biology? I mean, I know there's so many.
Yeah, there are so many that you can go into. You could either, you could be in research and academia, working in a lab, working in the field, a scientific diver. You could be working in policy, working for conservation organisations, working in zoos and aquariums. And again, it's a very personal preference to, what people want to go into. And they all have different requirements and obviously different salaries and things like that as well. I started off in the zoo and aquarium industry and sort of moved away from that and started doing more conservation work and conservation related jobs. Then I moved into education and academia, then into leading expeditions and things as well. Most recently, I actually wrote my own degree programme that I now teach and deliver at Kendal College too, in marine biology and rehabilitation. Of course, we've developed a trip to the Red Sea with Morecambe area divers.
And how did you land your first job in the field?
My very first job, I'd left university. I'd come back to the Midlands, so I was not anywhere near the sea. I didn't really, that was one of the first challenges I had. I was sort of like, what do I do now? And how do I actually break into this field, especially having to move back home after finishing uni? And the first thing I did was start volunteering at my local sea life centre. So I used to get on the bus for an hour every weekend. I'd go and volunteer, and after about 10 months, they gave me my first contract. And that was the first job that I ever had in that industry. And then it obviously led on to a career in there before I then, moved on to other things.
How was your first year like once you landed your first job?
I really enjoyed my first job. I absolutely loved it. I loved being hands-on with the animals. I couldn't believe, that I was getting paid to go to work, and I was, feeding sharks and turtles and otters and all of these things. And I felt, really, really lucky. Time went on. It is a difficult industry to work in. You get really emotionally attached to your animals. It's hard when you have to work with or for people that have different values when it comes to welfare and different ethics to you. At the end of the day, they're businesses first and foremost. And I think that's, what I really struggled with, in the end. And, sometimes you'd be working with people that, didn't take it as seriously as you, or, used methods that you didn't necessarily agree with. And, eventually that was why I ended up, moving on from that industry.
And I was going to say, I know zoos and aquariums, they often spark, there's some controversy for sure. I mean, from your experience, you think it depends on the person, or do you think it's the industry as a whole?
I think it's hard because the people that you ultimately are working for are concerned with visitor numbers and profits. So you're always going to be fighting that battle when it comes to, spending money on your animals and, what is needed for them compared to, customer satisfaction. Like, they want you sometimes to, wake the animals up, or knock them out of their hiding places and things like that so people can see them. And, you know, I'm somebody that I have quite, you know, strong morals. And if I don't agree with something, I say, no, I'm not willing to do that.
Right.
You know, one of my very first jobs, not my very first one, but one not long after that, I thought it was going to be my dream job, but I didn't like the way the person in charge was treating the sea lions. And I ended up, you know, I made it known I didn't agree, and I walked away from that job, which was incredibly difficult. And you know, I struggled to get another job after that as well, because once been somebody that's outspoken in those sorts of things, it, you know, it's hard to then move on from it. But I persevered, and I got another job in industry after that. I just kept thinking I wanted to do what was best for my animals. I wanted to make sure that they had the best husbandry and welfare I could possibly provide, and I wanted to strive to ensure people that I was working with were on the same page and were wanting to do that. And, you know, I'd go to places, and if they weren't up to date when it came to welfare and things, I would try to make improvements and bring them up to date, because that's, you know, what mattered to me. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, the animals under my care had the best lives that they could have, and that public left, you know, with a strong conservation message, and they knew more about them before you know, they came in, by the time that they were leaving, and they were inspired, you know, to care about these animals.
That's awesome.
Outside of the aquarium as well. But I think after a while you just get tired of the same old battles, because as I say, they are businesses at the end of the day. And then when you're working with people that, you know, don't hold the same standards as you, it's incredibly frustrating.
You know, we often hear that, you know, you were talking about how it was difficult to find a job afterwards once you let go of one of the jobs. And you hear how competitive the field is. Do you think that, you know, in your experience, is the field oversaturated, or do you think that there's still a lot of opportunities for people?
I think there's still a lot of opportunities for people. I think you just have to be really resilient and persistent and not give up. Like that year that I was out of work, I sent CV and cover letters to absolutely every single place I could find in the UK. I didn't want to have an ordinary job. This was what I trained to do. This is what I wanted to do my whole life, and I wasn't going to give up on that. I think a lot of people would have given up on if they were in my position. Equally, there's an awful lot of positions that are voluntary and unpaid internships and things like that, which again are just more competition, because the job's so desirable, people are willing to go and volunteer and do it for free. And quite often they want experience, and so people have to go and do that for free to get the experience under their belt in order to land jobs. And I think that's something that makes the industry particularly difficult as well. But I think if you're somebody that is incredibly passionate about it, and you're persistent and you're not willing to give up and you keep going, then, you know, that's key to, you know, breaking down those barriers and eventually landing a contract. I was always doing wildlife rescue and rehabilitation work as well. So I trained as a marine mammal medic for the British Divers Marine Life Rescue, and I became the regional coordinator for them in 2014. So that meant that any whales, dolphins, porpoises, grey seals, common seals that were called in Cumbria, I would, you know, get a call and help coordinate their rescue and be involved in that. And then I was also rehabilitating otter cubs for the International Otter Survival Fund. And I also even though these are not marine, I rehabilitated bats as well. So I did a bat rehabilitation course and was doing that. And my local college just so happened to be opening a wildlife rehabilitation centre on site. And the vet that I was working with in rehab, and, you know, she was also my vet. She would come and visit me at the aquarium that I was working in at the time. And, you know, she said, oh, it's a wildlife rescue and rehab centre, and I think you'd be, you know, brilliant working in it. You should get in touch. And I got in touch to work in the Wildlife Rescue and Rehab Centre. I'd never considered teaching ever. And I kind of went there, and the person had said, "Oh, I really see you as a lecturer." And I got offered a lecturing contract there, and I didn't know if it was going to be the right move for me or not, but I really wanted to change from the aquarium industry. I wanted
Mhm.
to, get out and do something else. So I thought I'll just take the opportunity and try it and see if I'm any good at it and see where it leads me. And it was the best decision I ever made. I'm still there now. I've been there 10 years now, and I've gone from teaching on all the wildlife courses. I teach aquatic animal health and husbandry, wildlife conservation, animal behaviour, and to have written my own degree in marine biology and rehabilitation as well, which
That's
obviously the rehabilitation focuses on, the seals and things like that we rehabilitate in the rescue centre.
that's amazing. What does the day-to-day look for that? I mean, for your expeditions, for your wildlife conservation. I know they're separate, completely separate things. But walk me through it, as someone that has like no idea, or it's someone that's so curious.
So really, really busy. Obviously, my job at the college, I make lessons, I've got marking to do. We have to do admissions, enrollments, all kinds of things for that, reports for the university, exam results. And then my phone can go off at any time with a call out for British Divers Marine Life Rescue. I had one just this weekend, actually.
What, or anytime in spontaneous moment, they're like, come now.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
you just
okay.
get an alert. Um, if you can respond and help, then you reply. But we have a hotline that is 24/7 all year round. So yeah, you can get a call out at any time. And then for them as well, I also deliver training. So I try and run a training course once a year in my area, refresher training for existing medics. And then I've also delivered marine mammal medic training abroad as well. So I've been to Gibraltar to train the government there on how to rescue cetaceans, which is whales and dolphins. And then I've delivered rescue training in the Gambia as well, and, set up the first marine mammal rescue network there with Project Wild Gambia. So yeah, that side of things, it can be really unpredictable. You never know when a call out's going to come, and then I will arrange for the seal to be assessed, at the scene. Deem, you've got to deem whether it is a candidate for rehabilitation or whether it needs to be left alone, or even on a health assessment, how sick it is, whether it needs euthanizing or anything like that. And then if it's a candidate for rehabilitation, usually it will come to the rescue centre, and then we can do the tube feeding, the intensive care that it needs before then it gets moved on to a more long-term rehabilitation facility where it gets fed up to a certain weight until it can then be released back into the wild. But also I'll be on calls at all hours of day and night for expeditions because we've got team members all over the world. So sometimes the calls are really late in the evening for me or early in the morning. And again, that takes up a lot of time because we've got lots of different working groups that when we run expeditions, we usually have like a set of expedition goals and things that we're looking to research and achieve. And you have to work really hard in the run up to the expedition to prepare everybody for that and coordinate all the equipment that's needed and the methodologies and how we're going to communicate this and what we're going to do. So it involves a lot of planning and meetings and calls as well, which again, as I say, I attend those in between teaching and in the evenings. And I'm also doing research masters using the killer whale data that I collected on expedition in the high Arctic in 2022. So I fit that in alongside everything as well. So yeah, lots of time is needed in the day. Usually I don't watch much TV in the evenings. I come home and I start on either expeditions or whatever's needed at the time.
Yeah.
Make a lot of to-do lists and just slowly work my way through to-do lists. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm like, how do you keep up with everything and then have time to talk to me? But yeah, that. Wow. Okay, the expedition. So you get told, hey, we're going on an expedition, but it's still a lot of, obviously a lot of planning before you head out to sea. And how many people are typically on this expeditions? How many are on board?
So when I went to Arctic Norway with Sea Women in 2022, we had 3 expeditions back to back, and it was 36 women.
Wow.
And then we're going to Antarctica in February, and we've got a team of 25 women for that one. I do research expeditions with Project Wild Gambia, and the first time I went, we'd got about 12 students. When I went last year, we'd got about 8 students. It just varies depending on what you're doing, where you're going with. Just come back from Zanzibar this summer. I had 22 students that were secondary school age here in the UK from London. So they were aged like 14, 15 years old, that I took there for a culture and marine conservation expedition. They did a lot of snorkeling and things, and learnt a lot about assessing the health of the coral reefs. And the size of the expedition team and who they are just depends on, you know, who you're going with and what the purposes are for and where you're going, and, you know, the size of this vessel and things like that as well, how many berths you can have on it, whether you're going to have the whole vessel, whether you're going to just be a small team on a much larger vessel, things like that.
Obviously, I want to know, like, what are the pros and cons of the career? I mean, it sounds like, you know, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of sacrifices, you know, but what, from your experience, what are those pros and cons?
The pros are doing something that you love. I think it's not so bad for me because I do absolutely love what I do, and therefore it doesn't feel like work to me. I'm quite happy to sit and plan expeditions. You know, I get excited. You know, it's really great to work with these people and see these places and, you know, do the things that you're going to do. Equally, I really enjoy planning lessons and making lessons. I don't enjoy marking so much, but the actual, you know, teaching and putting your materials together and, you know, what you're going to teach them and the learning outcomes of what you want to show them and, you know, what you want to achieve with that. I love that side of things as well. And the rehab work, is, again, that's really, really rewarding, especially when it's a success. The cons are obviously it's draining, it's an awful big time commitment. Obviously, you don't have to take on as much as somebody like me. A lot of people would probably just do the one job role. But as I say, I love it and I don't tend to say no to things, but that's one of my positives, but can also, I guess, be a negative because I tend to take on an awful lot. But yeah, it's the time commitment, and especially I've started doing a lot more expeditions, and, you know, it isn't always nice being away from home all the time, especially if you miss things. And it's hard coming back as well because you've kind of lived in this bubble and been away from real life and real world responsibilities, and then you come back home and it's a bit of a shock to the system. And you find yourself just kind of dreaming of being at sea again. Students and animals as well. Obviously, you know, if you put a lot of time and effort into a rescue case in the rescue centre and the animal doesn't make it,
oh man,
it is sad. Like, you know, we always, you know, teach people their wildlife cases, don't get emotionally attached, but, you know, you do really want the best outcome, and when that doesn't happen, you know, it can be upsetting. And it's the same with students as well. You want the best for them, and, you know, when things don't go right, you're upset for them too. So I guess those sorts of things are kind of like the downsides. But for me, mainly just the time commitment side of things.
But you do believe that there could be like a work-life balance? It just depends on the person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, I am somebody that says a yes to a lot of things and I just do it. Whereas other people, would try and balance it better, most probably. But I don't have kids or anything like that. I always kind of knew that what I wanted to focus on was my career as a marine biologist, and that was always been what was important to me.
No, yeah, and I mean, it shows like the amazing work that you've done. It shows for sure. And kind of going on the different careers, what are some of the highest paying or most sought after positions in marine biology?
So I think working in academia is well paid and a sought after position if you're going to be a professor and things like that, teaching at a university. If you want to go into research and things as well, obviously research isn't always consistent or that well paid, but you can progress yourself within university settings that way. So those are probably the sorts of jobs that I would be looking to get into as a marine biologist.
So do you think that you need to get more than just an graduate degree? You need to continue to maybe like get a master's or a PhD. Do you think that's needed?
If you want to go into academia, yes. If you don't want to, then no. To be fair, being a scuba instructor is really well paid as well, especially if you've got a marine biology degree alongside your dive master, and you can travel the world and earn a lot of money in that industry too.
I didn't know that. What, if you don't mind me asking, do you know like what is the typical like average pay for a scuba diver or a professor and a researcher?
I don't know because I've not a paid dive instructor, and
Right.
I'm not a professor at a university,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it compares. But I know that, yeah, those are some of the well-paid positions in industry.
No, that's good to know. As you read a lot of comments and people are like, "Oh, you don't get paid that much," but it all depends. Obviously, like you're saying, it all depends on the career.
Yeah, and
What are the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say entry-level positions, and working in zoos, aquariums, those sorts of industries, they're always going to be low-paid, more minimum wage positions. It just depends on what you want to do. But equally, I think most people don't go into the field of marine biology for money. They go into it because they want to work in that industry. They've got a passion for that job, or they want to be hands-on with animals and things, and they want to go to work where they enjoy what they do, and that's the most important thing, rather than the wage that they're getting paid. But that being said, there are some jobs out there that pay a lot more than others.
That, like, what are some of the biggest myths or like the misconceptions about marine biologists or just marine biology in general?
I think that we just play around with dolphins all day. I think that's what people kind of imagine when you say you're a marine biologist. And there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot more being in uncomfortable conditions, hard work, staring at spreadsheets. Like, I got to go snorkeling with killer whales when I was on expedition in 2022, which was amazing. But equally, all this time after that, where I'm just doing rates of occurrences of behaviours on spreadsheets, and the whole of that comes with it. There's a whole other side that isn't as glamorous as people would think that it is, or are led to believe that it is.
That's good, yeah, because most people think that I'm just gonna, get to hang out with the animals all day.
Yeah.
No, that's so good.
Even in zoos and aquariums, it's a lot of cleaning up poo, doing food prep and things like that. Like, so you've got to be prepared for that.
Oh, no, I believe it. And who would you not recommend this career to? Is there a type of person you think that might not thrive in this career?
People that don't like pushing out of their comfort zone, people that don't like uncomfortable conditions, people that don't want to get dirty or don't want to immerse themselves in their topic quite literally, because,
Mhm.
it's always good to be able to go underwater and, see what you're studying and things as well. And also people that don't want to work with or deal with people. As I said, a lot
Mhm.
of people say, "Oh, I want to do this because I like animals more than people." Um, but whether you're working in zoos and aquariums, whether you're working in conservation where you've got to deal with people, if you're in a vets, you've got to deal with people. Like, there's no getting away from that. So
Mhm.
those are the sorts of things, or the sorts of people that might not necessarily thrive in this industry.
No, that's true. And and kind of going into, obviously you're passionate about what you do. How has your career changed your view on climate change or the environment, for someone that's not out at sea and seeing the conditions, how bad is it? How true, for marine life, if you were to describe in words.
Um, wow, that's
I know
a
it's
good,
a loaded question. Sorry.
yeah,
It's a loaded question.
because I am hopeful that we can make changes that that are needed. It takes everybody though. It's not something that, one group of people can solve. It's got to be, collaborative, everybody working together. Um, I think more than anything I've seen, the ocean it's not just a body of water. It's like
Mhm.
a living, breathing ecosystem. It supports all life on Earth. It provides the oxygen that we breathe. Like, life on land depends on the ocean. And I think more and more people are starting to understand that and realize that. Um, and equally, I think, I used to think conservation was about you protect animals and ecosystems, and you protect them from the people that harm them, and that the people that harm them are bad people. But actually, it's a lot more complicated than that. There's, people that they care deeply about the ocean, but they're in a really tough situation. They don't have a lot of options. And
Mhm.
I think more than anything, it's important to think about how people are part of the ecosystem. They're not separate to it. And, I've worked with local communities, I've met local fishermen, I've tour operators and things like that, and understanding how we all connect and the effects on the ocean and how everybody has to work together to protect it is key. And that is something I am hopeful will happen, more and more in the future, as people are realizing how important it is in
Mhm.
regulating our climate, in supporting life on land. The fact that so many people rely on the ocean as well. Um, we've got the whole blue economy, and it needs to be sustainable. And I think everybody wants that, no matter who they are. They want a sustainable sea. They don't
Mhm.
want a sea that they're going to, fish and the fish are all going to run out, you know. So it's just incredibly complicated because the ocean is worldwide. Everything that lives in it crosses borders and boundaries. They're not just, when you conserve an animal, it's not just one place, because it moves from place to place and things.
Mhm.
And there's, as I say, so many different people, everybody's sort of involved in it, that everybody has a part to play. And I think that's what makes it difficult. Um, but I am hopeful that, as I say, awareness is getting greater and greater on the importance of the sea. And I think it is something that in the future, hopefully, we will get a handle on, and we'll see, good changes.
If you could give just two pointers to people, two takeaways, a change, a small changes people can make on their daily life, what would it be?
I think to make ethical choices when you are purchasing things. I think people should think about where their products have come from. That could be everything from food to, the fish that they buy, to fast fashion, things like that, and just being, more aware of the whole process from start to finish of where that product has come from before you buy it, and trying to make more ethical decisions. And then also just, trying to manage your own, carbon footprints and wastes and things like that as well. It's something that everybody can do as an individual, and the more people that do it, the better, as well as educating others. That's a really easy thing to do too. Spreading awareness, getting involved in local beach cleans and things like that, and just, being aware of the choices that you make as an individual. That it's easy for us to say, I'm just one person. I'm not going to make a blind bit of difference to the entire planet. But when you've got millions of people all saying that, whereas if you all thought, I am one person, but I'm going to do this. But if you thought, well, millions of people are doing that, then collectively it makes a massive difference. So.
That's so true. That's so true. And out of the many years of experience that you've had, could you share a specific story? Like what's been your most jaw-dropping or unforgettable moment, in your career, whether it's positive or whether it's negative?
Oh my gosh, I've had so many, but
you know what? Share two then. I want to hear.
Well, I have to say, seeing wild killer whales underwater for the first time was amazing. I remember sitting on the Zodiac before my first drop thinking, I know there's been no fatalities of killer whales on people in the wild ever, but I was just thinking, if there's going to be a first one, it'll probably be me. And I was just but I got in, just dropped in, and I saw them, and oh my goodness, it was incredible. And it was the first time it was a pair, and they kind of swam a circle around me, and then this killer whale came back in front of me. And you know how I have a pet dog, and you know how dogs they tilt their head sometimes when they're looking at you, listening intently. And this orca just come back round directly in front of me and just was tilted its head at me as if it was working me out. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then from that moment on, every chance I got to get in the water, I was straight in. That initial fear of being the first person to be killed by a killer whale in the wild was just gone. And obviously I'm still here, so that's fine. But yeah, they were incredible to actually see underwater. And then on that same expedition, there was humpback whales, but it was humpback whale superhighway, because there was 70, 80 humpbacks, and it was layers in the ocean, layer upon layer upon layer of humpback whales, and they are massive. And
how did you guys even navigate through them?
Oh, and you'd got mothers and calves, and the calves would be under the bellies and looking at you. And again, there was one experience on that expedition where it was further on, so polar night had kind of really set in, and it was a lot darker when you were out on the water and underwater. And there was this humpback that kept rising and rising and rising, and I could see it. I was directly above it, and I was thinking, does it know that I'm here? It's just coming up and up and up. And I was thinking I'm going to get knocked out by its tail or something like that, or it's just coming up and up towards me. And it was literally, just feet below me. And it just rolled on its side and eyeballed me, looking at me. And it just had a look, and then it just went back down, and off it went. It was it just purposely came up to look at me, and then off it went back down, and I was just oh wow. And as I say, when it got to polar night, there was another time there was like a bait ball, and there was humpback whales, fin whales, killer whales, and all the herring scales were like, they looked like stars. And because it was so dark underwater, you'd just see like killer whales emerge from the gloom, like they'd fade in and out, and humpbacks and fin whales, and it looked like you were swimming in outer space because the scales looked like stars and everything was dark, and it was just, yeah, such an incredible experience.
It sounds like a dream. It really does sound like a dream.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm like, whoa, my heart's racing, just feeling like I'm there with you in the water.
Don't get me wrong, I've been to places where, you know, we've had storms, I've been stranded on islands and not been able to get off them, and all kinds of things.
For those dreaming of a career like yours, you know, in biology, what advice would you give them?
Work really hard at school. That's something obviously that I did. I tried really hard in my exams at secondary school. I looked at universities that I wanted to go to and the courses. I really read into them as well, because just because it says marine biology, if you actually look into the course content at different places, you'll find they do different modules, and you want to try and pick the one that you're most interested in. So I'd find to make sure that you're on the right course in the right place and you know what you need to get there. And then as soon as you can, just start getting experience under your belt, volunteering wherever you can locally, because that, again, as I said earlier, is just as important as the actual qualifications that you've got on paper. And then trying to get, you know, any extra qualifications you can, whether it's dive training, whether you're going to go do a marine mammal surveyor course, a marine mammal medic course, or anything like that. Just, you know, just start doing it and start early. So once you've finished your degree, you know, you're in the best position then to start landing jobs.
Thanks for clocking in with us. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you got a career you'd like to see, message us on Instagram. We're always listening. Till next time, it's time to clock out.